Welcome to Keeping It Green, a podcast for ornamental plant professionals and enthusiasts, with hosts Margaret, Pickoff, and Tom Butzler.
Hello, and welcome to Keeping It Green, a podcast from Penn State Extension for ornamental plant professionals and enthusiasts. I'm one of your hosts, Margaret Pickoff. I'm a horticulture educator with Penn State Extension, and on each episode, I'm joined by my colleagues on the green industry team as co-hosts. On today's episode, my co-host is Tom Butzler. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Margaret.
Nice to have you on the show. On today's episode, we will be joined by Glen Bupp from Penn State Extension. Before we get to our interview with Glen, Tom, let's talk about what's going on these days. This is the first day of December.
Yeah.
I've got a gloomy gray day here in Philly. Have you been seeing anything interesting, or what are you working on?
Yeah, so first thing there, you said gloomy, and yep, it's the typical central Pennsylvania weather. It's overcast, it's kind of drizzly, it's kind of raw out, so I guess this is what's going to be for the next couple months. But what I'm seeing out there, and haven't really done much in the landscape. Things have really quieted down. Working with the vegetable industry, everyone is getting ready for the winter meeting season, both us as educators, but growers also. They attend these meetings to get some of their pesticide credits, but also learn some new tricks, trades, products that they can utilize in their production. But the big thing we're getting ready for is this Mid-Atlantic Fruit and Vegetable Convention that comes up in January. Alongside the farm show, which occurs a couple weeks earlier. So, even though we're not doing a lot of outdoor stuff, I mean, there is a lot of preparation going in for some of these big shows that are upcoming. How about your way?
A little bit of the same. I am coordinating with a few other educators, the Southeast Pennsylvania Green Industry Conference, which happens in a little over a month on January 4th. At Temple Ambler, and that's a really fun conference. It's right after New Year's. It kind of kicks off it kicks off the winter meeting season for everybody. But we're having some great speakers, including Tim, who is a co-host on this show often, and actually our guest for today, Glen, is going to be speaking at the conference as well. And so that's a lot of details to figure out, but it's all coming together, and I think it's going to be an awesome day. We have a loose theme for the conference this year, which is extreme weather impacts on the landscape.
Yeah, that's good.
And so we've got a couple of talks that focus on climate change and plant selection. We have a panel discussion that I'll be moderating with some folks from the industry about extreme weather and generally what they're seeing in the landscape in the last couple seasons, what stresses they're noticing and how things are changing. And then our keynote is Kathy Salisbury from Ambler Arboretum, who we've also had on the show. And she's going to be talking about the tornado recovery at Ambler Arboretum.
Yeah. I remember that podcast. That was good.
Yeah. How she's kind of making decisions about what to plant that will thrive in kind of a new maybe temperature range, new exposure to extreme weather events. So that's going to be, I think, a really great conference. Lots of great speakers, and it's always just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I might have to head down for that. That I think weather is playing more and more of an issue in our landscapes. I mean, I think you talk to any of the extension educators out there, we're seeing some really funky things happen in the landscape that you can't contribute to, an insect or disease issue. And you got to think that, some of these environmental stressors are playing much larger roles. So yeah, very nice.
Yeah, a lot of things that we kind of for a long time have been dealing with as sort of background, maybe nuisance things, like sort of diseases that are always present, but they never really cause that much of an issue unless the plant is really stressed, or insects that usually don't do a whole lot of damage, again, unless the plant is stressed. We're seeing kind of much greater impacts. And I think it points maybe to this kind of cumulative effect of just weird weather, long dry periods followed by a ton of rain. So yeah, it's really interesting and something I'm kind of excited to hear more about and learn more about. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's what's going on. I'm super excited for our episode today. And let's bring on our guest. Glen Bupp is, like us, a horticulture extension educator with Penn State Extension. And Glen is based in Butler County, which is north of Pittsburgh. For those who, I believe that's correct, Glen. You got
it. No, you're
I
right
got
on.
it. Okay,
Yep.
My Western PA geography isn't the best, but yeah, we've both had the pleasure of working with Glen pretty closely through our work on the green industry team, and Glen is also part of the vegetable and small fruit team. So welcome, Glen. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks. This is a really cool topic that I think we're going to talk about today, and I'm excited because it's just kind of fun and interesting, the whole aspect of it. And yeah, so thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we like to start out by just asking, our guests to describe what they do. And at this point, if you've listened to, a couple episodes of our podcast, you probably have an idea of what an extension educator does. But Glen, what kind of work do you focus on in Butler County, and what does your day-to-day kind of look like?
Yeah, sure. So I should say that while I am based out of Butler County, the geographical range that I cover is a little larger than the county itself. So I guess I'll go to that geographical lesson of Southwest Pennsylvania. So I cover basically up to Lawrence and Mercer counties down into Washington County. So there's about 7 counties there that area covers. Mostly with vegetables. I do a lot of vegetable work, doing site visits with farmers and helping them with integrated pest management issues, soil fertility issues, and just kind of getting a feel for what they're doing and helping them scout those types of things. But I also, and kind of relevant to this podcast, work with green industry as well. And of course, green industry, so many different types of people working in the green industry that you could really spend a whole lot of time just focusing on one of them. And I guess one of the areas that I really have found myself working the most with within the green industry is with parks and rec personnel, and a little bit with DCNR as well, which kind of there's some overlap there, especially with those who are managing our state parks. And within those areas, I think the biggest workload or areas of interest would be invasive species management, specifically plant species management, a little bit of ecological work, native plants, and those types of things. I'm really also interested in helping homeowners make their yards more wildlife friendly or ecologically sustainable. Going back to some of what you're talking about with that upcoming conference on January 4th, adapting to climate change, or just being better stewards of our land, which of course in this area north of Pittsburgh there are many sprawling suburbs, areas of habitat that have been highly disturbed through human activity. And I think there's a need, and also some really good opportunities for impact to help in that area of kind of being better stewards of our land. So that's kind of what I'm interested in within the green industry anyway.
So your day-to-day operation, Glen, you're working with plants, something centered around plants. So how did you get there? I mean, what was your interest in your early childhood that propelled you to study this and come this way?
Yeah, so I have to say, and I have 2 young kids, and so it's really important for me to bring them up with an appreciation of plants, or at least of nature. And I think I can pinpoint when I first got really interested in plants to a 2nd grade project where everyone probably planted a sunflower seed or bean seed when they were in school, maybe in May. And then you took it home for the summer and you planted it hopefully in a garden or in a pot and watched it grow. And I did a sunflower seed, and I remember that come late August, this thing was taller than me. And I remember sitting out underneath it. I was into trucks and stuff at the time, and I was playing with trucks underneath of this sunflower and watching bees go to it, and then actually go in. They were carpenter bees, and they were going inside of the my dad's garage at the time, but they were going from the garage into this sunflower, and I just like was intrigued by the whole thing and thinking, wow, this came from a seed. And so that got me started as being, being kind of interested in my surroundings. But in college, it kind of became solidified. I went to school initially for oceanography, and I found out that I wasn't particularly good at the physics required to know oceanography. But I was pretty good at the biology, and I switched my major over to ecology, and it sent me on this path to getting involved with plants. I had an internship with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service during that time during my undergrad, working on invasive species control at Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, which also happens to be where they shoot off, where SpaceX currently is shooting off their rockets, but it's where the space shuttle used to launch from too. It was an amazing, amazing place. It is an amazing place. And I think that's where everything came together for me as far as my interest in conservation, active conservation strategies, and knowing plants and knowing natural systems, and working with the people who are getting those types of jobs done.
When I was stalking your LinkedIn profile earlier, which I do for most of our podcast guests, I also something I didn't know about your work history is that you worked as a rare plant curator at a botanical garden in Florida, where you grew up mostly there, from what I understand, and went to school there and spent your first working years there. But I know we've talked before about tropical plants and plants that are, not native to Pennsylvania, but can be valuable sources of income for folks in the green industry. And obviously it's easier to grow those down in Florida, but I know that you have that interest as well in
so you bring up a really good time of my life. That I love this job, but that might have been my favorite job I've ever held, I have to say, candidly. So that was with Bach Tower Gardens, which, for anybody who maybe be taking a winter trip down to Florida, absolutely worth going to Bach Tower Gardens. It's an Olmsted garden, so same landscape architect who did Fairchild Botanical Gardens in Miami and New York Central Park. So if you're into that history, really interesting guy. But as a rare plant curator, I really had the pleasure and honor of taking care of going out into wild populations of endangered plants and propagating them. So whether collecting seed or germ plant tissue, softwood cuttings, and taking them back to our greenhouse and propagating them up to basically establish protected populations at our botanical garden in case those endangered plant populations became extirpated. And then we had a seed bank and everything that we took care of as well, and did some tours, of course. But that was a great job that I think probably took me from that, knowing the ecological systems that I got to work with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and then taking it into the actual green industry aspect of things like propagation and teaching the public and integrated pest management and things like that. So
yeah, tough call, Glenn. That sunny weather in Florida versus this gloomy, overcast, damp weather of Pennsylvania. I don't know how you made that decision.
Oh, well, I do love Pennsylvania. I have to say, I love the seasons, and I love the changes that come in with those natural systems.
I agree.
The seasons too. I know we've talked about that too before. So
yeah. And so, Glenn, you and I have a lot of things in common in our work. One of which is that we are based in counties that are just north of major metropolitan areas. And so I think there's some similarities in the sort of range of topics that we work on just based on that. And one of the things that we have kind of teamed up on since we started working together is cut flowers, which is kind of on the edge of green industry and vegetable production. Obviously not an edible crop, can be an edible crop sometimes, but usually isn't, but not a purely ornamental, traditional landscape plant. And that's been such a pleasure. There's so many new cut flower farms popping up around Pennsylvania and surrounding states. And so I just wanted to mention that as well, that's kind of an emerging topic that we're really excited to work on. And at the conference that Tom mentioned at the top of the show, the Mid-Atlantic Fruit and Vegetable Convention in Hershey will be I guess we're session curators. I forget what the title is for the cut flower session, and we've got some awesome speakers coming in for that as well. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's been a great collaboration so far. So the reason, and I'll let Tom elaborate on this a little bit more, but we love hearing about all aspects of your work, but it came to our attention recently that you have been doing something kind of unique for a green industry educator and involved in the parks and rec kind of realm. And so, Tom, do you want to kind of talk about how the topic for today sort of developed?
Yeah, it was just Glenn and I were kind of chatting a couple weeks ago, and he had mentioned some things that he was working on, and he mentioned this disc golf. And I've played disc golf many years ago. I've played golf, just regular golf, and I've worked on a golf course. And so it just started, a lot of questions just started popping up, and I don't know a lot about disc golf and how these courses are laid out, the difference in maintenance between a regular golf course and a disc golf course. So just a lot of those things. And I thought, this is a sport that appears to be picking up. You're starting to see these courses being developed more in urban areas, where you got some concentration of people, but even in rural areas, you see them here scattered here and there. But so I just thought it'd be kind of neat to find out more information about it.
Yeah, I should maybe I'll jump in there. I have to say, and I full disclosure that I am not a disc golf player. I have never done it. Well, I take it back. I have done it, and I've dabbled around playing with it. But there's just like any sport, when you're really hook, line, and sinker into it, there's terms, there's ways to play it. There's lots of nuance to the game that I really can't speak to, at least right now. I think that'll change next year, especially as I've started to kind of get involved in talking about disc golf courses with with people who are designing them, maintaining them, and so forth. I do have a lot of friends that play disc golf or disc golf, and I'm fairly familiar with the game. And I would say that disc golf does attract a certain. I think the great thing about disc golf is that you don't have to have a whole lot of money to play it. And you don't have to be particularly athletic, or it's open to a lot of different people or different types of people, lots of people with different types of interests. And the general group, I guess, of people who play disc golf are super welcoming and accommodating, and they're very down to earth people. So I think that's one really cool aspect of it. And I do have quite a few friends who, when the weather is nice, they go out and play disc golf all the time. But I was back in October. I was invited to just cover some information on invasive species management as it relates to being in a parks and rec setting. But the theme of that particular talk was disc golf course management, and so I learned quite a bit about disc golf management there, and some of these things that I didn't know before. And then it got me really thinking, in the area that I'd really like to pursue is kind of combining these interests of using disc golf courses as a management tool for invasive species management. And I think that, so, when it comes to, I'm a big hiker and mountain biker, and when it comes to putting in trails into woods, most of the time in many cases that can almost be looked down upon, because as soon as you start inviting people to walk through an area of woods, inevitably you've opened up the woods, you've possibly opened up the canopy, you start to see invasives that pop up along the trail side, and it becomes a management issue. But I think if you kind of flip that script, especially at least, with the woods that I'm familiar with in many areas of Southwest Pennsylvania or newly created parks, we're talking about early successional woodland. So they were probably logged or clear cut in many cases less than 50 years ago, or only 50 years ago, or maybe they're older woods, but they're not regenerating properly because they haven't been maintained in a way either with fire or with essentially wildlife control like deer to allow new forest to regenerate. So what happens is you've got these invasive species that really can take over many acres in that in that understory and lower the diversity of those wooded areas. So there are kind of already, many of these park woodland areas are already not what fulfilling the ecological roles that they could be fulfilling. And one of the management nightmares is trying to get rid of or even get access to those invasive species. So a lot of times we're not working with a pristine wooded area where you might be, encouraging people to come in and hike around and then see a detriment to that area. We're kind of working with a disturbed area already. And so I think of, if you're going to put in something like a disc golf course, which requires quite a bit of underbrush removal and some thoughtful planning to get rid of the brush itself to make the actual course, this could be utilized as a conservation technique to get rid of invasive species, and then maybe down the line even curate some of that area to become more diversified with native plantings and so forth. So I also think it's a great way to bring in the general public to an area that for them to learn maybe about the natural resources of that area, whereas before maybe they wouldn't. When you think of a hiking trail, you don't get a whole lot of signage along. It would be discouraged, right? You don't want to see a whole lot of that. But on a disc golf course, there's signs at each hole. There's lots of opportunity for education along the way. So anyhow, I just think that there's lots of potential opportunity here. And that's kind of the area that I'd like to explore a little bit more.
So just to back up a step, Glenn. So the way you're describing this sounds a lot different than a typical golf course, which is wide open, just vast plains almost of turf. And you talked about walkways are kind of narrow, and it just sounds like a different feel on what this looks like. Can you describe the difference between a disc golf and just kind of the regular golf course?
Yeah. So it's a from a management standpoint, it is very different. It's much less intensive, and it's actually the average, not speaking for all disc golfers, but I would say that the average disc golfer wants to be in the woods. They're looking for that that solitude of getting out, or maybe at least to get out and enjoy nature. And matter of fact, most of the disc golf courses utilize trees as their obstacle. So a good wooded setting is helpful in that case. Okay. Now, there's lots of good example of disc golf courses that go through wide open areas for like really extreme putts that are very impressive, or even through urban areas too. But at least in Southwest Pennsylvania, and I would say probably, Pennsylvania being a lot of woods as it is, there's the average golf course is probably in the woods. Now, there are fairways with turf, but to just draw, I guess, a difference between a standard ball golf course and disc golf course. You're not managing that turf in the same way for playability. I know that the average disc golfer wants to make sure that they can find their disc. So having really tall grass that you can't find, and that includes the rough area too. So I mean, a lot of our native systems or like ecological systems do have tall grasses, and that would be something that you'd need to think about if you were designing a course or managing a course. But along the actual fairway, the way that I've heard it described is if you're in a sunny area where turf may have the opportunity to exist, it should be like kept at the same way that you might keep your front lawn. So in that 3 to 4 inch height, and weeds are not a particularly big deal. That way you can find it. You can find your disc after you've thrown it. But also, I guess there are some maneuvers with like rolling your disc and skipping your disc that height of grass allows as far as playability is concerned. But the cool thing is that I think a lot of disc golfers don't want there to be a lot of manicured types of scenes. They're looking for that kind of wooded walk, which can be difficult from an invasive species management standpoint, but also kind of it's not as intensive from a turf or ornamental standpoint either.
Yeah, I worked on a golf course one summer, and every morning at 4:30 we'd be up mowing those fairways because they had to be tight and short, so the ball could be roll and I guess easily found too. But so maintenance on these courses then is it sounds like logically a step down from the traditional ball course.
Absolutely, I think yes, and there is a lot more thought, and this is where I don't really know everything about this, but you know, where you tee off, it's very important that those concrete bunkers are designed and constructed in a way that's safe. So you can slip on them very easily if they're not designed to be rough. Essentially, they look kind of rough. I mean, they're really regressive on your shoes so that you don't slip. But in the fall, if leaves fall onto those bunkers, you know, blowing off that or sweeping them off, making sure that sand and things don't get on it, I think is probably more crucial from a gameplay standpoint than something like height of the turf in the fairway. You know, so yes, exactly. Keeping trees trimmed and whatnot.
Just to do a really quick overview of what disc golf looks like as it's being played for those who are maybe more familiar with regular golf. There are similarities, but a lot of differences too. And so at least the courses I've seen are kind of integrated into an existing park. And some of them, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm kind of a newbie at this, but as you mentioned, there's a tee area. So some of them will have like a concrete pad at each tee off area for each hole. That's a certain distance away from what I usually see is kind of like a metal pole with a metal basket and chains on it. And that's kind of the hole that you're trying to not get your disc to land in, but just get it to hit that pole. So you've got a couple different sizes of discs and weights of discs that you can choose from, whether you're going to throw it super far or throw it kind of like with putters, I guess, and drivers. Is that a golf thing?
Yeah, no, you're right. And this, I can speak only a little bit to this. So for anybody who might be listening now and just face palming as I mess something up, forgive me.
We're plant people.
Yeah, that's right. We're horticulturists.
But very quickly, to just kind of make the analogy to ball golf, there's an area where you tee off, right? It's usually a concrete pad. I think the average length is about 12. You want enough distance for a good run. It's like 12 feet long or something. There's an average for this, and this is where getting a good golf course designer to do an actual if you're thinking about implementing a new course or designing a course, working with somebody who is a golf course designer you should do that. And there are lists of these. There is an association for disc golf course or for Frisbee disc golf. But you're right. So there's a par, just like you would have in ball golf. Each hole has a different par. And there's these nets instead of holes. And there's all different designs. There's good ones and there's not so good ones. And I can't speak as much to all of these things, but I will say one of the things that's really cool especially from a Parks and Rec standpoint, and if you're going to take the investment into designing a course and maintaining and building a new course, most of these are movable. So you can they're like a pole in the ground that you can lift out and take away. So you can hold other events on your course, or if, you know, we all know that sometimes vandalism is an issue and things. There's movability of these. So especially in like a Parks and Rec setting where you might have a multi-use area, disc golf can be somewhat dangerous. You don't want to have a hiking trail that goes right through the middle of a fairway without signage telling people that there might be a Frisbee coming at you.
Yeah, they're heavy.
Oh, they're heavy. Yeah, I mean, they will cause damage. You don't want to get hit by, especially by someone who can throw it, you know, like 700 yards. There's these professionals out there who do amazing things. But, you know, so there is some there's more flexibility, I think, in the game because you're usually looking at it from a multi-use standpoint. And that's what's great about it, though. And that's why I think there's so much more opportunity with the designs. And yeah, there's varying levels of degree. I think when it comes to design of a hole, the golf course designer is trying to think about the game from the standpoint of the player, of course. And so when you go to tee off, not only are you looking at what the challenging aspect of the game is, so, you know, where am I going to go throw the disc to land first so that I can line up my next shot, but also from kind of a landscape design aspect. When you stand back and look at the whole picture, you're supposed to be enjoying yourself. So how does the scenery, you know, and we've got some beautiful rolling hills here. How do those rolling hills set the backdrop for that tee, or what other natural features come into play that really highlight that particular hole? And I think that's where the art aspect of it comes in, which I can really appreciate from at least the ornamental and landscape standpoint of things. So, but you're right. There's different discs. I don't know all the different discs, but they even have like counterbalances so that they can adjust for the way that you throw and stuff. And I mean, I think there's some really funny YouTube videos out there of like watching, the memes of people as they get into disc golf, where they go from like just getting one Frisbee. And then, 5 years later, they have like an entire room full of Frisbees. And, you can go down the rabbit hole pretty quick. So that's why I say not this year, but maybe next year I'll be that guy. But
I think you're right, though, that it because you had mentioned that there's a variety of sort of skill levels that can easily enjoy this as a sport. And I think at the very most basic level, it's a wonderful way to walk through your park and like get to know different parts of it, because you're going from hole to hole. And so it's not like you're going around, just you're circling the park or going the way that you normally would, but you're kind of almost forced to go like, oh, I guess we're kind of going through the woods now, and we're gonna go down this big hill, and it's kind of I see it as a really great way to bring people into the park and use it in a different way. And there's also a ton of time, probably like regular golf, that you're kind of just walking and you're finding your disc and you're seeing the plants there and you're seeing some birds. And so as someone who is at the very low skill level side of the spectrum, I can just enjoy it also for just, it's a wonderful way to sort of move through a natural area in a different way, and a slightly more active way than just like meandering around. But for folks interested in bringing more people into the parks and having people engage in different aspects of the natural landscape, I think it's a great way to do that.
So you mentioned a walk through the woods. I think that's been mentioned a couple times. So everyone here on the podcast has a pretty good grasp on plants and horticulture, but a lot of these folks that are probably playing disc golf do not have a lot of that knowledge. So is there an effort by people that put these courses in to scout the territory, the area, and find out what plants that are there and which ones may be detrimental to the golfers? So for example, the first one that pops into my mind is poison ivy. You got them, the vines crawling up the trees and around shrubs and crawling around the ground. And if someone's chasing their disc in the woods, because this is not a wide open area, I mean, is that a hazard, or is this just kind of the risk that you take in playing in these areas? And the other thing that pops into my mind too, with this kind of tall grass and this interface between the woods and some of these grassy areas, is ticks. So these sound like hazards, and how are those addressed on disc golf courses?
Well, from the little bit of interaction I've had so far, I would say it's limited, if at all. And I think that's the next level of design that could really go. That's the next evolution, maybe, of where some of these designs could go. I will say, they are looking. My understanding is that most of the time designers are looking at trees from the perspective of play. So obstacles and safety of the tree, of course, as well, because again, the disc can really beat up a tree. So there are some ways that they can protect the trees, but they're usually doing things like stacking up logs around the tree, which in and of itself is a practice that could be looked at for what are the health implications of a tree by stacking up a bunch of dead wood around the base of it. It may be fine, it may not be, but if you have a beautiful red oak that you're using as a specimen and you kind of TP this dead wood or all around the base of it, there's a certain amount of weight there. You're probably inviting in some things like borers who are attracted to that dead wood that could cross over. I don't know. It'd be a very interesting thing to look at, because they're looking at it as a way to protect the tree. And I wonder what unintended consequences might be coming along with it. But they are at least doing a good job of protecting the tree in that sense. I'm not sure that they're looking at it from the sense of, most of the time when you would be cutting in a trail, you don't want to invite people into the nicest part of the woods often, because that's, from an invasive species management standpoint, that's where you're going to protect that first. But I think that could be an opportunity, to your point. A lot of these plants are hazardous, whether it's poison hemlock, Japanese barberry will get you, multiflora rose will get you, common buckthorn. But if you could pick a place, especially if you've got a good, beefy mulcher, to do some serious landscaping around the base of those trees, you could really pull out those areas and make a really nice setting versus just kind of avoiding it altogether. So those are risks. I think that the same risks that anyone takes when they go on to a hike or an excursion into the woods. And I suppose that the average disc golfer is probably willing to take that on. They're the types of people who kind of know those risks that come along with it.
Okay.
But to your point about the Japanese, like ticks, Japanese barberry is a refuge, acts as a refugia for ticks. And so I think that if I were managing a disc golf course and I knew I had a lot of Japanese barberry, for public safety, I'd want to get as much of that out as possible, just for the public safety aspect of it, let alone the invasive aspect of it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's something to think about in the sense that Pennsylvania, I think right now is number one on reports of Lyme disease. So, I mean, and ticks playing a major role in that. So if anything, just put some signage up and let golfers be aware that, hey, this is a risk. And, maybe the risks, when you go play ball golf in a regular golf course, you have risks. You have these sand traps. Those are kind of your risks, I suppose. So when you're playing disc golf, it's a different set of risks. You don't have sand traps, but you have other things out there.
Yeah. And Margaret, to your point, I met with an elementary school the other day. It was a really great visit. They wanted some identification of invasives in their area and just some management help. And they're looking at getting some grants. It's a 20-acre piece of property, and they've already cut in some hiking trails for the kids. It's an elementary school, and they take the kids out there as a way of just learning about nature and getting them physically active. But they don't really have any programming that overlaps with like their gym class or really with their science or any other science aspects of their classes to make it a tool for the kids. And this conversation kind of came up where it was like, okay, well, you're looking at grants, you're looking at increasing the programmatic aspects of this area. Could you cut in even maybe not a full 9 or 18 whole course, but maybe just 3 nets out there, and then you could have gym classes out there. You could talk about science. You're getting the kids out walking, and some of those,
and physics too, right? Speaking of physics,
you could do all sorts of things. Yeah, aerodynamics, what have you? Engineering classes. I mean, I don't know what the sky's the limit, but as with many of these grants, if you can incorporate more than just, okay, we're going to remove these invasive species, but now we're going to turn it into an educational aspect. We're going to reach these number of people. We're going to get signage out there. You kind of maybe increase your efforts. And I feel like it could be used that way. So I don't know.
And I do, what you said before about these disc golf courses providing maybe extra incentive or even, a different perspective on management of invasive plants in the park. So, if you have more park goers who are interacting with these spaces that are, highly prone to invasions of invasive plants, you have more eyes on it, you have more people complaining about it, more people saying, my disc got stuck in a bunch of Japanese barberry and I tore up my arm trying to get it out. It puts a little more pressure on the park, maybe, or more incentive for them to look for extra funding or to be funded by their municipality to not only, do something to establish the disc golf course, but also to keep it maintained. Something that we see a lot of with projects that are really well intentioned, like rain gardens, is that they're established and they look pretty good for a couple years, and then over time they just get totally taken over by weeds, and because there's no plan there for the ongoing maintenance of those spaces. And so I think you're onto something there for sure, that if the disc golf course is kind of visited by a lot of people and becomes popular, it provides further incentive or further kind of backing maybe to receive funding for that park to continue its management of those invasive plants.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
Yeah.
And it crosses over really nicely with the education that we're already doing and teaching people about invasive species, or just simply getting their credits to maintain their pesticide applicator licenses, because the people running these parks have these licenses. And it's a really, for us as educators, it's a great place to hold a landscape pest walk, to walk a disc golf course and learn that way and gain some credits. But
yeah, well, such a cool way to incorporate your invasive plant knowledge and your horticulture, and kind of, interacting with parks, which is always a great way for extension to sort of provide support to our local municipalities. Yeah, cool. Well, we're kind of nearing the end of our time together here, Glen. Tom, I don't know if you had any other questions for Glen about disc golf.
No, it's made me want to go out once we get into spring, to go out and give it a go. It's been years and years since I've played. So, and just go out and play the golf part of it, but look at the design, the layout, and the plants that are on there. I'm kind of curious now.
I've got to give another advertisement to something in Butler County. So Cranberry Township just put in 2018 their golf course. It's the North Boundary. They call it the No Boundary golf frisbee disc golf course, and it is it's the longest disc golf course in the state and one of the top 10 in the world. So pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Wow. There's great things to see. Like I said, I think there's over 7,300 disc golf courses in the world. I mean, it's a growing thing. So,
okay.
Yeah. Once you start noticing those weird poles with the chains hanging on them, you start seeing them everywhere. Great. Well, Glen, thank you so much for being a part of this show. We always like to end the podcast by asking our guests what they like to do when they're not working. And you mentioned mountain biking and hiking. What do you enjoy when you're not being an extension educator?
Yeah, if I can go out and get a bike ride in, I'm very happy. And I am an avid mountain biker. I still haven't figured out how to cross over mountain biking and some of the things that we talked about today. The mountain bikers are going too fast to look at the background. But I do have two children. They're young, and maybe I don't know if it's a good answer or a lame answer, but I spend a lot of time with them, and it's great. I get to go out with them. But I'm fairly exhausted at the end of it too. So if you guys know,
there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
No, it's a good thing. But I spend a lot of time with my kids and mountain biking, and I like to eat and cook too. So that's my simple life.
Nice. It sounds really, really nice. Great. Well, thank you so much, Glen. It's always great to talk to you, and have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
All right. Take care.